Welcome to the Painting of the Week podcast, where we look at some of the most significant paintings throughout history. Introducing your hosts, Phil Grabsky and Laura Bentham.
And welcome to Painting of the Week. Today we are looking at a gorgeous painting, to be fair, the Penitent Magdalen by Georges de la Tour. Painted pretty broad, isn't it? What did they say, Laura? Something like
1625 to 1650.
Yeah.
He took his time on this one.
Well, or they're just not quite sure when he painted it.
Okay.
Probably.
Oh yes, I don't think there was much known about him.
Yeah. As always, and I know that many of you are regular listeners, and thank you. Thank you also to those who are telling your friends, dragging them into the room to hopefully enjoy these podcasts. We're now in our, rather scarily, we just realised this is like number 50 something, isn't it?
I tell you, I'm definitely a massive thank you from me.
50 something. Anyway.
I love looking at these paintings.
So please go to seventeenth-art.com, seventth-art.com. That's our website. I know you'll all want to be distracted by the shop and go there and buy lots of presents. But go first to the painting of the week, where you can see the painting, or for those of you looking at this on YouTube, absolutely the most simple films that we make, which is basically us talking and the picture.
That's good. Then people can get on with their ironing and stuff, can't they, when they're listening and looking at the picture.
Exactly. And it has to be said, unfortunately, to the best of our knowledge, this painting is, while owned by the Met, is not on display, which is a shame, because I think it's marvellous.
Yeah.
Laura.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Thank you.
Talk to me about the Penitent Magdalen.
It's quite dark.
Yeah.
But the Penitent, obviously, is that she's sitting in, contemplation, thinking about all her life. And then even when you just tap in at the Penitent Magdalene, you just get up. There's so many. If you put in images, and they reckon there could be about 109. She was quite a popular figure to paint. Being in contemplation as such, contemplating her.
So why do you think she's popular?
Oh, well,
We've talked about this before, haven't we?
Yeah.
You're an artist and you're just slightly bored of doing portraits of dukes and duchesses.
Yes, okay.
So, and your main commissioning body, the church, wants religious paintings.
Yes.
So, what you want is, that's why the Bible, which with our film Eastern Art, we called the greatest story ever written, the greatest story ever painted. There's so many wonderful images in the Bible to paint, and nowhere is it written in the Bible that the Penitent Magdalene sits at a mirror and with a skull on her lap, but he would have been I don't know the commissioning process for this particular painting, but he's able to paint something within a religious framework, but also allows him to express himself as an artist in terms of light. He can paint a young woman who's not entirely clothed. He can show off his ability with cloth, with the texture of hands, with the texture of a skull, with the candle light, with the light reflecting on the mirror.
She really, really was so faithful to Jesus. So in Eastern Art, then, how have you got all the paintings? Probably must have, or okay, not some of them, but so many of them must have her.
No.
In their paintings. She's
a figure more painted subsequently than actually appears in the Bible or in the Gospels. There are 3 Marys talked about. She clearly Mary Magdalene is not the primary Mary.
No, but because she had her past was what she, her sins of the past.
I mean, you had to be very careful how you painted the Virgin Mary. Caravaggio, who we'll talk about in a minute, got into enormous trouble.
Oh, really?
Because he painted the dead Virgin Mary lying on a slab, and not in the typical way of ascending to heaven dressed in flowing robes, but basically as a woman off the street, as a normal human female that had died. And that wasn't the only time he did that kind of thing, and it really shocked people.
Oh, okay.
Mary Magdalene you can have more fun with, if you like, because she's got a bit of a racy reputation. She's got long hair here because part of the story is she washes Jesus' feet with her hair.
Yes.
That's a pretty sensual thing to do. You're not going to hear about the Virgin Mary doing that.
No.
And then, people riff on this story, and there's a whole theme of the possibility that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married and had kids, and that led to a certain line which exists to this day, and it's all very murky, and Dan Brown arrives and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it's all, it's pretty, one always hesitates to say something's nonsense, but let's call it nonsense. But with the Mary Magdalene, an artist has the ability to express themselves whilst remaining relatively comfortable within a religious framework. Clearly, he's not trying to show anything of the period.
No.
I mean, she wouldn't have dressed like that. There wouldn't have been mirrors like that. This is. If there was a model sitting, this is 17th century, and this is as much about my understanding of Georges de Latour. This is as much about Georges de Latour just enjoying the act of painting and showing off what he's capable of.
Okay, but also there's so much in it, though, isn't there? So the candle reflecting, because there's other paintings very similar to this, and there is one candle in it, I think. And so the fact that she's obviously reflecting, that's what he's trying to portray.
Okay, yeah.
She's trying to reflect on her past.
Okay.
And therefore...
Well, hence the Penitent, okay.
Well, that's where all the paintings of her, the Penitent Magdalene, after she's forgiven for her past, and she seems to just be always like contemplating.
Yeah.
What's her past.
And of course, you got the skull is always a symbol of mortality, obviously. And you see the skull popping up fairly often not fairly often, but frequently enough in 17th century paintings as a reminder of mortality.
Yeah.
And I think even the candle, that can be extinguished at any moment.
I see. It's funny that, isn't it, with the skull? Because that hasn't got a lot to do with... maybe then she's reflecting on the fact that her own mortality... She was the first person to see Jesus after he was risen.
Yeah.
And so this painting...
Apparently.
Yeah, well, on this painting, all I was trying to do was work out the significance of all of it. But even the fact that the Penitent Magdalene, and her expression, you don't see her expression at all.
No.
So it's created by really the way she's sitting.
I find that rather frustrating, actually. I mean, we haven't really encouraged people to look at the painting, have we? So.
Oh no, sorry.
If you take a closer look, again, formally, it's very, very smart. So you've got that central area of light that your eyes are immediately drawn to. So you close your eyes, you open your eyes, you're going straight to the I don't know if you'd even call it a blouse, but I mean the material that's, and her skin's very white. So you kind of go there up to the face, which is turned away from us. I don't know. I don't think she's turned away from us in shame. I think she's looking at the mirror, but the perspective isn't quite right.
No.
She wouldn't be able to see herself in the mirror.
No. Maybe she's just...
But then your eyes are, you you go back down her left arm, or indeed directly to the two candles. You will then go around the frame, which is very beautifully done. And I think I mentioned once before that picture frames like this were deliberately, obviously at night things are lit by candlelight, and the picture frames themselves are often designed, and the reason they're gold and have this ornate nature to them is to reflect light onto the painting. In this case it's a mirror, but
yeah. I don't think I was there when you mentioned that, Phil. I love that.
But then
I didn't know that.
If you start looking a bit carefully, I'd say that there's a necklace.
Yes.
And is this representative of her dispensing of her jewellery and her attributes of wealth and just because actually possessions, because again if you look on the floor, I think there's another necklace down there, and maybe even some 4 or 5 pearls again,
right.
that she's just kind of
discarding
and saying that she doesn't, she's now going to pursue a life of fidelity and faith and as you said, contemplation.
Yeah.
But that beautiful red that drops you down into the darkness, where you look carefully enough, you see those jewels, and then you're kind of in the darkness yourself. Is he just, is he making a point by taking us into the darkness?
Isn't it though? The fact that her hair's down, so that's sort of loose woman.
Or is it just that it's before she goes to bed and she's just combed it?
Okay.
I mean, again,
what about the fact that her dress is red?
But I don't think, I think that's significant because, and bear in mind, by this point in art history, the Virgin Mary is always in blue because of lapis lazuli being such an expensive colour, coming from essentially one mine in Afghanistan, so it's very valuable. So for hundreds of years before this, they paint the Virgin Mary in blue, and red has become associated with fiery and perhaps rather racy.
Was she ever painted in a different colour?
Virgin Mary, yeah, she was initially.
Oh, okay.
It's a bit like that story that I've told of Julius Caesar and purple.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like people today will wear a lot of gold. Or because they're showing off their wealth. Similarly, it was such an expensive colour because it's come all the way from Afghanistan. The rarer something is, the scarcer something is, the more expensive it is. So you're just showing off, and then they showed off by painting her in.
That's interesting. But also in a lot of those other paintings, she always has it's like a jar of ointment or oil, because she did when she dried Jesus' feet, she also anointed his feet.
Okay.
So I was looking, and I did wonder if to the right of the mirror is there a little, but I'm clutching at straws a little bit on this one, but no, lots of the other paintings of her
have a little jar. Maybe. I mean, there's something there.
Yeah.
If it could be a candlestick, which is very, very cautiously painted. I mean, it's barely visible.
It's amazing how much of this painting is in the dark.
I mean, we have to always exercise some caution because we're not looking at the original.
No.
And the original might have details that are not apparent in an image.
Yeah.
What else? I know
he was really a massive fan of Caravaggio.
Ah.
And heavily influenced by him.
So he's probably influenced then by the Caravaggisti, isn't he? By those who were influenced by Caravaggio. You see what I mean?
Oh, okay.
So Caravaggio dies in 1610. I don't know Georges de la Tour's history well enough to know if he went to Italy, because if he didn't go to Italy, you would barely have seen a Caravaggio, because so many of them are still in the same churches that they were painted for 400 years ago. But there were other artists that were influenced by Caravaggio, and they were called the Caravaggisti.
Oh, okay.
And they certainly made their way to Europe, so that's, he's almost certainly, and this chiaroscuro, this night effect. I mean, wonderful to paint, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
but it is exactly how it would look if there was a candle in the room. I mean, there wouldn't be any more light.
Yeah.
It wouldn't come from anywhere else at all.
So it's much more dramatic.
Yeah.
That's why Caravaggio is such a great artist, because they're so dramatic. That often just a single source of light.
It amazes me. I was just thinking about this the other day with the photos, and how obviously this was all before cameras, and you sort of think to yourself, can an artist capture a moment or a facial expression more than a photo would? And there are certain artists that can.
Do you know, it's very funny you should say that, and I know you have no idea what I did yesterday evening, so you're not...
No, I don't.
That wasn't a prompt, but I have a friend who is a professor of history, but his speciality is criminology.
Oh, okay.
And he works at the Open University. His name is Professor Paul Lawrence. And yesterday he gave a talk, and I went to listen to this talk in Brighton, and it was about the police photo fit.
Oh, okay.
And this is good. We can go off on a tangent here.
I love your life, though, Phil.
Yeah, it was fascinating. So he showed the first, what he believes to be the first police drawing of a criminal.
Right.
Where they actually drew an image of the person they were looking for the first time. And in the 19th century, 1846, maybe something like that. And it's amazing because, let me tell you the story. A coin dealer gets on the Brighton train.
Right.
Would you believe? And at Preston Park, which is my station, my little station before Brighton, this chap gets out of the compartment and he's lost his collar, and the station staff noticed that he's lost his collar. He's got a watch chain on his shoe, which they think is a bit odd, and he's got some blood on him. And they say, what's happened? He said, oh, I've been shot. And they say, well, better take him to the hospital. So they take him to the hospital, probably the one in Elm Grove, I guess. Anyway, and he gets, they see some scratches and stuff. They don't see a bullet wound. And he says, I've got to go. I've got a meeting. And he runs off.
Right.
Not that long after, the coin dealer is discovered, who had been shot and had been thrown out of the train at Balcombe. For those who don't know, Balcombe is a bit further up the line towards London. And they realise, of course, at that point, that the guy who'd come off the Preston Park is the number one suspect. And they do this picture and they print it. And this had never happened before. He takes rooms locally and is caught very easily because he asks for his wages to be sent to these rooms.
Right.
And anyway, they find him without the... Anyway, the point I'm making is that my friend Paul then took us through the history of the photo fit. So you start with just being drawn.
Yeah.
And then you got to something where it was done with overlays. So you would overlay the hair and the ears, and then you got the one which probably the one people know best, which is like you have individual bits and you put it all together.
Yeah.
The eyes and the nose. So it's not overlays; it's you kind of creating a face. And of course, today we're entering the world of artificial intelligence.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine what that's going to be like.
But
Yes.
one of the conclusions made is that actually the trouble with a photo fit is that it looks like a real person.
Yeah.
You could argue that's the point, but actually when you put these ears and these eyes and the stuff together, it's so realistic, and in some ways it's not that helpful, whereas a drawing just leaves a little bit more open to the imagination, and it's easier for someone it's easier for someone's memory to be drawn than to be created with this photo fit. And of course, when photography first arrived in the middle of the 1850s, well, earlier than that, but when it takes off in the middle of the 19th century, it's exactly what painters were saying. So, well, what do we do now that there is this method of recording a human image, which is another issue, but it's so accurate. So what they chose to suggest was that we can actually represent emotional truth, inner truth, deeper truth. So you could argue that a Rembrandt was earlier, but that his portraits, which are painted, you could never get that kind of emotional depth from a photograph. Now, a photographer might argue with that.
Yeah.
All of which is to say that there's always going to be space for the drawing or the painting, and photography hasn't killed them stone dead.
Well, photography, you have to get the exact second.
The split
Whereas,
second.
yeah, with the artist, they can
Yeah.
spend hours getting.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point though, because I've been thinking about it this week. I don't know why I got into looking at some photos, but yeah.
Well, with this, on some of these mobile phones, you've got live photo, so it'll take, I don't know how many it is, like 8 or however many, or if you just take multiple stills of somebody who doesn't seem to be moving, and you look at them carefully, and each one's different, and you realise that each fraction of a second your face changes, something changes.
Yeah.
And we all look at pictures which we really don't like the way we look, or other ones we think, actually, we don't look so bad there.
Yeah.
It's a fraction of a second, it's a change of light. What's slightly frustrating here, of course, is that she's barely visible. I mean, it's.
I mean, nothing, hardly at all. You can. Her nose is almost like just a dot.
I mean, you'd be. I would be tempted to have something reflected in the mirror, a shoulder or a hand or.
Yeah.
But again, maybe it's light illuminating the blackness, the darkness. I mean, again, one can read. I mean, it's fun to play this kind of, what are the symbols?
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. That's why I like it when people still request paintings.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that means I'm going to get to look at another nice one this week. But I think because there's so many of them, that is why it was so intriguing as to, quite how often she was painted in the paintings. And I'm assuming because of her past, because of her friendship almost with Jesus, and the fact that then they say that she was the first person to see him after he was risen. So, why not? She's got a nice story, and also maybe people can associate with her because, maybe we weren't all so perfect in the past. As you get a bit older, you definitely contemplate life more, don't you?
She's definitely
so if you were going into church,
very thoughtful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
That's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
You were going into church thinking, oh well, maybe I could have done that a bit differently. Or, so you see Mary Magdalene and you think, oh, okay.
She's not on her phone. I mean, seriously, she's not on her phone. She's actually thinking about life.
Which is quite nice.
By the way, this is at the Met. They actually do date this at 1640.
Yeah.
And I think they call it the Penitent Magdalen with two flames. A slightly different title. So you did tell me when he was born.
1593.
93, so 1940. So he's 47. So he's in some ways getting on.
Starting to reflect
himself.
Which is maybe why the skull's there, because I wasn't quite sure about the skull, to be fair.
Skull's definitely there to say, we're all heading the same way.
Okay.
That's what she's thinking about. And of course, we know that this event happens. All right, this is set in the 17th century, but she's penitent after Jesus has been crucified, resurrected, and then that whole period is gone now. So this is the aftermath.
Yeah.
And she's wondering about her role, what she learned, what's her role now. Fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Beautiful picture. I'll have to get onto the Met and say, bring it out.
Yeah. I should now be contemplating my next cup of tea. Making sure that I have one. Just in case.
So if you were to, your contemplation of an evening, the thing that's missing there is a cup of tea. Yeah.
Yours is busy with lectures on really interesting things.
Oh, that was quite unusual to go to. It was in
It's great.
it's in a beautiful church in Brighton, which I'd never been into before. Driven past it
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of times, but this is the first time I've been in. And anyway.
Doesn't matter where you live, there's always a beautiful church.
That is The Penitent, Magdalen
Yes.
with Two Flames by Georges de la Tour.
Mm.
And if you find this period interesting, then we have a great artists short film about Caravaggio. We've certainly done Rembrandt as an exhibition on screen, and I'm sure you all know that we've done 3 Vermeers, not least Vermeer, the greatest exhibition, which as we speak and record today is in its 11th week in cinemas, so doing tremendously well. Thank you all very much. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Painting of the Week podcast. For more information, please visit our website at seventh-art.com or contact us by emailing info@seventh-art.com. See you next time.